Dog ain't eating today, sucker.
Not to do that.
Sorry, Pooch.
All right, today we're getting started with, I don't know what episode number we're on because I haven't been keeping track, but the conversations have been good and I'm excited for today's conversation. Counseling students when we aren't counselors is what we're going to be chatting about today, which is a heavy topic, but a very important one because our students are going through it, I think, and they need somebody. So what are we doing for them?
I think that gets tricky because if you say too much, you get too personal. You get too personal, then it becomes a whole different issue. So just trying to find that professional versus personal, trying to relate to them in a way, even if you have to like say, oh, back in the day this happened, but this came out of it, and just finding that in between and bringing them back out from anything getting too personal, not telling them, hey, you need to go see a counselor. Or I think you need to go to the doctor. And I think just finding that medium is very vague sometimes.
How are we figuring that out though? Because I had a student who I was talking about earlier who snapped back at me and said, I'm sorry you don't understand people's lives. And as I'm trying to help her be a stellar student, because I know that she's capable of that, I had to take a moment to actually figure out, do I understand this person's life? And do I need to go into a conversation about why I do understand her life and why I don't care? Or do I care?
Well, sometimes you just have to listen so they know that you
Right, and
that
hold space.
that you heard them. And then ask them, have you reached or researched resources? And then you send them to Catrice.
I've done that and then taken them back to my office because they were threatening. I've had 3 that I can name for sure that were in the midst of such a huge crisis. They were talking suicide. And so I couldn't just let them leave, or so they just sat in my office and I sat with them. I've had a student go before, he was a night student, went before day students and said, I almost killed myself over the weekend and it's your fault because you guys didn't check in on me. So then I had a whole classroom, devastated and feeling like it was their fault. So I've had a rash of students on the brink of like totally annihilating.
Well, I think sometimes it gets tricky too to figure out if someone's really being real about their accusations and what they're threatening versus trying to get the attention.
I want to address what you said with empathy.
Right.
You're playing the crowd. Suicidal people don't announce, I was going to commit suicide.
And they don't. And he did. And so we let him know. I took him aside. And then my instructor had to kind of was shell shocked. So I took him aside, let him know that that wasn't appropriate, that we do care, but we are limited in what we can do. And that he did need to continue to seek help and have a list of resources. And then I had to go back to the classroom and address them and let them know that this was not appropriate. We did not condone this. And, and then settle that down. So I understand, but when you're in the thick of it, I brought a student and she just was so far out of it that she was talking about all these different things. I actually had to get her to give me permission to call her mother so that the mother could also sit on the phone with her while she was in my office. But she was so far gone that there's no way that she could have left. And I didn't feel like I could just leave her in my office. So basically all I could do is just hold space. And sometimes that's all you can do. You can't fix things. You can't delve into every reason why they feel that way, but hold and support them. And I'm happy that I did because each and every one of those students graduated and they're a success and they have jobs and all of that. So what would have happened if I would have said, oh, I don't care, just go home, whatever. They probably all would have quit school and, not been the success. And I'm not saying that I'm the reason that they're successful. I'm just saying holding space.
But you're instrumental in it, so, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to.
Yeah, I've run across a couple times where I really didn't have to say anything other than just lend an ear
Yeah.
and let them vent.
That's
Yeah,
a lot of
and-
times, that's all it takes is for
Mhm.
people to hash it out in their own head
Right.
verbally with someone who will do what you're doing. Yeah,
Right,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean,
No,
but,
no,
it sounded bad, but anyway.
no. But sometimes that's all you can do is just say, I get it,
Mhm.
but, try and calm them down. And then I do use some of my little things like my essential oils and the Bach flower essences and things like that to get them emotionally
Mhm.
settled. So.
I think I do a different approach. As I'm listening to you. No, I just like to remind them, like why you're here.
Yeah.
What brought you here? There's a reason you're here. There's a reason we're meeting. There's a reason for all of this. And then just trying to remind them, I have them do like letters to themselves when they're in the younger courses. So then that way, sometimes I have those if I need to pop them out and use when necessary. But I try to bring them back. Like, I hear you. It's times are tough. How old are you? They usually say 27. And I say your 20s suck. Like, you're at least going to have 3 major things happen. And then try to just talk them into difference and remembering your family that's supporting you. If you don't have that, your friends. And then just telling them, I'm over here believing in you before you believe in you, and I want you to be successful. And so I hit it a different aspect, which I love yours too, but
Right. And we're all different.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
the results
I think it
are
just
pretty
gets,
much
if it
the
gets too
same.
personal, it gets tricky.
And I don't try to get personal with them.
Mhm.
I just, because I do remind them, this is why you're here.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
this. This is,
Yeah,
this is how it's gonna be.
I don't think I could give them, I can't give you oils in a room. I was telling them in the camera, I can't do You know what I mean? Like, come on, please take this lavender. Like, there's something wrong with me. Like, I don't know, but I love that because you're massage. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
clinical.
Yeah, absolutely,
So I have that
absolutely.
certificate.
Absolutely, no, that's 100. I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be like, here's some hairspray. Don't spray in your eyes. I get all awkward. You know what I mean? Like, ugh.
I'm wondering if this generation, just their expectations of how they communicate with people, if this is kind of playing into that, because I do think that just in this particular town, we do have a high suicide rate among young people. So I don't know if it's just the conversations, their expectations, because I was surprised that girls, you don't understand people's lives, as if I don't have a life or don't know. But is it our job to provide them with resources? Is it our job to provide them with space? Like, well, where do we have that cutoff? What's the cutoff?
I don't think it's our job to, no, but
No.
then again, as role models and support systems, I guess, we do have a small responsibility. I've never been into anything as deep with students as what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I will admit to y'all, I don't understand suicide at all. I don't, but the places that I've been with students has been mainly homelessness, out of gas, out of food, divorce, trouble at home, family, siblings, boyfriend, girlfriend type situations that are a lot lighter and easier to handle.
That's not necessarily lighter.
No,
those are
It can go down a darker
Well,
avenue.
but the thing is, some of those things have happened to these students, and so they've reached a point where, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And there is, I think mental illness is a huge problem, not just here, but across
Well,
the nation. And it's kind of shoved under. So no, it's not our responsibility. It's not our job, but yet it is part of our job. Does that make sense?
Well, it's because we're dealing with them on
Right.
a regular basis, and that's what they're bringing to
It's
us.
human nature, dude.
Yeah.
You want to protect it, and we're all here to
help,
do that.
But you can't do that for them. You can have maybe a list of things or hold space, do the, yeah, I hear, and, I acknowledge and all of that so that they feel seen and heard, so that they at least know that a lot of times if you just internalize everything, it's so much worse that when they have a chance to let it all out, then, they kind of go, oh, well, it's really not as bad as I thought.
Mhm.
So,
I know that some of the things that you're mentioning, even when I got here, I was like, man, there's so many random things that we provide our students with here. But like I'm saying, those are the needs, like eating, not being able to eat, that's a big stress. That's a big deal. Being homeless, that's a big deal too. And that is a lot of the stuff that some of our students are dealing with.
Well, then you got the ones going through divorce,
Yeah.
the abuse, not having the family,
Loss of
the
family.
loss of family
Loss,
members. Yeah, you just got a lot going on.
I was listening to something yesterday, and it said that if you're attending school and things are going good in your life and you have a good support system, then you're going to school and you're probably doing well and you're gonna be successful because that's what you want to do. If you're going to school and things are not going good in your life and you don't have a good support system, you're actually going to school to find a support system.
right.
And I thought that was an interesting statement because, that's how I do see our students. I see them, the ones who are broken and they do need an extra ear, someone to point them in the right direction, someone to give them guidance that maybe nobody else has taken the time to give them. Sorry. I thought you were going to add something, Jake. Something profound to say. But I don't know if you guys feel that way similarly with your students. But I thought that was a good reminder, at least, that some students just show up and they're going to have a time and they're excited, and some students they really need us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also helps too, like on Mondays, I'll always be, hey, what you guys do over the weekend?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And sometimes you might be the only person who was asked that person.
Yeah.
That's really.
Or how's it going? I grade every single student. Wow. When I had teachers, I would greet all the students one way or another. Right now I'm in a classroom, but I greet every one of my students. And how's it going? What's up? How was your evening? What you do over the weekend?
Right.
Just, and you call them by name.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because they're like, I'm not just another, number, a brick in the wall or whatever. I'm actually, he knows my name, and trying to include them in what you do, in our case, in the shop, work them into the work, give them a job that's different than what someone else is doing. Don't make it a ridiculous task or something that doesn't mean anything, something with some substance to it. I have sometimes people will clean up for me. They'll do stuff of mine for me. They'll move things. I don't know, you got some pretty good organizational skills. Let's work on this over here, and I think that gives them, if not for a very long time, a moment of I matter. Whether there's nothing wrong with their head or they do have issues or they are bored or they're not, and it doesn't matter what their grade is, but give them something to do. Talk to them on a daily basis, which becomes a support because you're recognizing them instead of my vision of college, 4-year college was always you're just a paycheck sitting in a classroom for somebody that you don't even
You don't know
who
if there's a
knows
care
who
about
he is
you.
on his yacht with
Whether
his
you're,
girls,
yeah.
So
I think just saying good morning each morning is valuable. Because if I don't say it, they'll be like, well, they didn't even say good morning to me today. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know you like that. Hello, good morning, you know. So just knowing, and when in CCR, even that first day, I try to make a point to remember their names, and that just makes them feel a certain kind of way. And so just starting and planting those seeds, so that way when it does arise, it's easy to help them down in a good way.
I think one other thing that was taught to me a long time ago, so I'm not a counselor, none of us are counselors. I don't know who has the mindset to be a counselor. They're crazy.
Right?
That kind of burden on me, but I was taught that people who are going through a little bit of a tough time and who are going as far as suicide, exactly what you said, you have to give them something to do. So if you're talking to someone who's having a bad day, you do assign them a task, or you do make them do something where they have to check back in with you, because if they have that, they people are more likely to commit to do something for someone else than they are
for themselves. Yeah.
So that is the one task that I do know how to do. I'm like, hey, you know, I know you're going through a tough time, but I also think you're going to get an A on this next coming test. So what I want you to do is we're going to go home, we're going to study real hard, and then on Monday, when you're done with your test, I want you to email me. And so they're like, I have to keep that. I have to email her.
Right. Yeah.
And whether or not I care about if they get an A is neither here nor there. But I do care about them as a person. I want them to feel like that just commitment, and that, you know, they start to do that and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm proud of myself. I can do this. These aren't so bad. But yeah, that's the one thing that I was taught to do, is you give them something to check back in with you with. And usually
It's kind of like raising kids.
$1,000,000%. I don't have no kids, but I did.
Listen, you're like, you let me know what you got on that test. They call and he's like, hey mom, I got real good. I'm gonna be there. Thank you. All that said.
Does anybody have anything else that they would like to add, or has helped them counsel these students, even though that's not necessarily our job? No. Just be there.
Be a good person.
Be a good person. That's all it takes to be a good teacher. Be a good person.
Be a good person.
Listen, help when you can, guide and direct.
Right. Right.
All right. Well, we'll do this again in a few weeks. Thanks for the good conversation.
Bye.